Testing, testing. Let us know in the chat room if you can hear us. This is an audio test. Give us a little shout out in the chat room. Thanks. All right. Welcome. We're here.
Hey guys.
Hello.
How's it going? So glad that you made it. Thank you so much for showing up. It's Mother's Day, so we appreciate that you made the effort. You kicked your mom to the curb. You're spending an hour with us. Much appreciated. This is Vinny. Vinny,
Hey,
how
guys.
are you?
Doing
This is
well.
Steve.
Hello, everyone.
The three of us worked together as a team in the last 5 to 6 months to build this course, the Go-To Editor. And today I thought, because we're sort of at the end of this first round of taking enrollments, we're going to talk about some of the questions that relate to the course as well, but more so give you some opportunity to take away some valuable insights, ask us some questions, that kind of stuff. So here we go. Why don't we turn it over to the chat room right now?
Yep.
Vinny, let me know what people are saying.
Okay.
Where are you from? What time is it where you're from right now?
Let us
And
know.
Let us know.
How you guys doing?
All right, so Steve, Vinny, while you
Yeah,
check this,
sure.
Steve, give us a little overview of how you guys got involved with This Guy Edits and how we got here to this point.
Absolutely. I just sort of stumbled upon Sven's channel about 3 years ago, looking for great insight into how to better my storytelling through editing, and his channel just leaped out at me, first of all through the name alone. Like, oh, it's plain and simple, straight to the point, so I just went straight for that, and noticed that I loved how much engagement was put towards the actual footage, and the amount of concentration that I could read on Sven's face was really important to a beginning editor for me to understand, because I wondered if he had the same questions that I did when approaching a new edit, and he just so happened to answer almost everything I had a question about. So it led to a relationship of us sort of talking through comments and then eventually working our way through a friendship to where we could end up using each other's talents to help each other out with videos. And then Vinny got brought in for a couple of those, and we ended up filming some stuff for Sven and doing a ton of great graphics and cool little animations every so often. It's pretty much any tool that we could give Sven at our disposal.
Nice.
That's-
Yeah, and I'm so super grateful that they initially helped on the channel and then helped me build this course. I want to ask you, how's the audio, by the way? Were you able to hear Steve clearly? Is this working for you? Let us also know in the chat room. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview, and then I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview what you can expect in the next 45 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about editing, two aspects, which is number one is how can you get your first paying client if you start off with nothing and you feel like you know the tool a little bit, you've worked on the craft. And then the other thing I wanted to briefly mention is just how powerful editing really is, why a lot of people don't really see it unless they're doing it. Like, as an audience member, you don't even know how powerful it is. And then finally, I want to give you a brief update on the course now that we're sort of barreling down towards the finish line, which is on Monday, tomorrow, at midnight in Pacific Standard Time, so LA time. If you haven't checked it out yet, I'm sure there's a link somewhere in there. It's the gotoeditor.com or thisguyedits.com/thegotoeditor. So, Vinny,
Yeah.
how easy was it to build this course?
This course was not easy to build because we wanted to include so many things
Yeah.
that we wanted to make sure we were doing it in a way that you guys get all the information, but we wanted to make it concise so you're not wasting your time either. So we talked a bunch prior to the course and seeing like what ideas we all kind of had with our years of experience, and it took a long time to really do, especially with us all working, and Steve and I got
Yeah.
down here and we picked up jobs pretty quickly, and so we were balancing that, and then cutting a lot of video. I think we shot maybe 10 hours of stuff. So
Yeah.
so
We shot a
About
good handful.
5 days, I think.
yeah.
Let's have some coffee.
Yeah,
here.
sure.
I hope you guys have some coffee as well. I really like the idea of editors with coffee. You gotta be a little careful with your laptops, so
Yeah.
maybe just put it to the side if you're not using it.
Yep. I'll take this.
Love these mugs too.
Yeah. Who made these?
This is some off-branded mug if I'd ever seen one.
And you can get yours now.
There you go. So before we get started, maybe we'll take like 1 or 2 questions, Vinny. If you could take them from the chat room.
Yeah, sure.
We'll get into those. While we wait, I want to talk a little bit about why I felt like the balance between sort of the business side of editing and the storytelling side should really be a focus of a course. And it has to do with the fact that I actually taught this class at a college, and it was called The Business and the Creative of Editing. And it really first of all, the response was really strong, and it really, I felt like, created the right balance where you can really look at your career, not just as I need to know how the software works. I need to be able to just like be really savvy with short keys and all that stuff. But you look at it, what is it that I really want to do? What are the stories that interest me? And then how do I create these stories? And then ultimately, how do I can market myself? Get into, like we did like mock interviews in the classroom where they were like in interview situations. What are the kind of questions that you should be prepared for? All that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. Do you have a question for us?
Yeah, I do. So from Burke Bolot, he says, I've been editing for a while, but some funny montages and wedding videos. What would you recommend to a guy like me who wants to get into movie editing? Your life is my goal at the moment.
Can I try?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say apply cinematic and or newer techniques that you've always wanted to try in your filmmaking towards your current work to start it off to see if it actually works in a storytelling way that a client could appreciate. Maybe like it'll be like paid practice almost. I think you could get that new piece of gear like a Ronin or something to get steadier shots and try it out for your wedding cinematography and just see like if it breaks into a more cinematic way for you. It just sort of like, this is my way of maybe like getting some great practice without having to write or anything like delay from your daily schedule. But if you I obviously want you to go out and write your own stuff and make your own movies, obviously, but this would just be a cheap, quick way to maybe get some great cinematic practice in there.
What I would suggest, if you are already working and you're kind of stuck in a niche, and especially if it's like a niche that's very, like these industries, they tend to be very protective. It's very hard to cross over. So if you're doing corporate video or wedding video, it's almost impossible for you to make a connection or have somebody from the other side want to specifically hire you to become a film editor. So what you need to find is a backdoor. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit else, but you need to be able to say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to set a goal to get there, and I need to set aside time. So on the weekend, you need to find that filmmaker that's shooting a short or is working on this indie project that doesn't pay much or nothing, and you gotta cut his short. And that short has to get into some form of film festivals. So it doesn't have to be Sundance or South by or any of the top tier. It needs to just have a festival life where it gets into a couple of film festivals. And you need to go. And you need to be there, and you need to present yourself as the editor of this short. And then what happens is you're going to be invited to all the parties. You're going to be talking to other directors. Most of the editors do not go to film festivals. I really like, if I have a film that is at South by Southwest, I'll pay my own ticket. I'll go. I put myself up there, and I make sure that I'm by the side of my director the whole time, or whatever works. Sometimes he's too busy doing press or whatever. But I'm available for every screening. Oftentimes I actually stay longer than the director in the festival to catch every screening, because there will always be industry people there, other directors that've seen this, and you have the opportunity to meet those. And that's how they immediately look at you as a festival short editor as opposed to wedding film editor. And so that's one way to get a backdoor. Let's take another question.
Yeah,
then
sure.
Maybe you can answer.
So we have some general questions about the course. So I'm kind of going to sum them up into one. So
Okay.
People are asking if we're going to update the course as we go along, and how can they kind of stay in contact with us as we go through. For the past week, we've kind of opened up the Discord, which has been amazing. We've been interacting with people, and we have a couple of people volunteering their time to give feedback on videos and help with even, technical problems that might be happening on there.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun to interact with all of you guys that have joined so far. So that's one way we try to stay connected, and we're working out any kind of kinks that might be happening in there. There's separate rooms for different screenings or separate spaces, so we try to keep it organized. It's been really good so far.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're on any of my email list and you haven't unsubscribed yet, I'll stop emailing you every day after the course closes, but I'll check in with you once a month maybe and tell you how things are going and if the course will open up again and when. Just know we don't know when it's going to open up, and this is really a Generation 1 release. What that means is it's going to be a little bumpy. There might be some problems, but we're there. We're paying attention. Like I don't have another project scheduled for the summer. I'll be there. I'll be watching your scenes every day. I'll watch a couple, and whatever suggestions you have. So somebody, for example, had a problem that one of the case studies is actually with a German film. And so you can't really understand the actors at the moment every time. So we subtitled that, we updated that lesson, and now you can pretty much follow along at any time as I'm cutting that scene. But because it's a Generation 1, you now have the opportunity to get that personal attention, and the price is actually what we think is a little bit less than what the course is worth. So in 6 months or whenever we open it up, it's very likely that we would raise the price, because then we've really driven it. We've tested it. We've spent the time to make sure it works right. And right now you have modules 1, 2, 3 available, so you have plenty of stuff you can work on. It's all narrative right now, feature film and branding. As soon as we're done with the enrollment, I will start working on the documentary module and get that ready for you. There's a ton of footage in there from an actual documentary that was released in theaters by Magnolia Films. It's called Dumbstruck. And we have an entire beat of one character that we are available to give to you, so you can cut that. And that will take some time. That's probably a 2-week, maybe longer edit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so I think now we'll switch to the main topic, which is how do you land your first client that actually hands you cash. And I did this really fancy graphic that keeps me on track. Let's see if it comes up. All right.
Ooh, fancy.
Awesome.
Wow.
Good stuff. Step number 1 is you got to figure out what you're passionate about. And it has to go from this sort of generic feeling of, I want to live your life, Sven, the life of being a film editor that works at home and gets offered features, which sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to not work for 2 months and then can work on the YouTube channel. So you got to really define what it is that you're specifically passionate about, because everything that you do needs to align itself towards your passion. And the number one reason why that is if you're not passionate about it, it's really hard for you to put in the work. Yes, you'll make the initial steps and you try to reach out, but if you're not obsessed about doing the things that you actually have to do in terms of building your craft and working towards making connections, it's really hard to succeed. So make sure you know exactly what it is. TV editing, what type of feature film, whatever it is. Do you guys want to add anything to point 1?
Yeah, sure. So some people are asking, as a solo person without having the footage to go and edit, it's hard to get your start. And I totally agree, because I was in the same boat when I was getting my start. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have anything. So initially I found a friend and we went and shot something, and it ended up being a 30-minute movie. It wasn't good. I'll never show it to anybody, but it got me started.
Yeah.
So, Steve saw it. He knows where I come from. But I edited that on Windows Movie Maker, and it was painful, but in the moment it felt magical. So I really started practicing my craft there. But it just kind of defined that passion for me. I knew it was something I really loved doing, and I wanted to keep doing it. So for me, it just made me go out there and make connections with people that were doing film, and eventually it kind of led me to a career in it. So you just have to take it step by step, know what you want to go for, and keep pursuing those things.
Nice.
That exact formula is actually how Vinny and I kind of met, in truth. We had done we both entered into a different 3-minute film festival thing, and I had entered mine, and he saw mine, and was like, hey, we both have pretty interesting ideas that we should run by each other, and then we just ended up collaborating from then forth, and he got me a job working with him as his assistant at our old job, and from then on it's just like you can pick up great people along the way if they see that passion, like Vinny was saying, through your work.
Yeah, exactly.
As I'm going through these points, I'm going to cover you up here, so they're
Okay.
all going to go down here.
Yeah, I'll just crawl around.
Yeah, just slowly like duck down.
Okay, so we're going to step number 2. There are about just 5 or 6 steps to this.
Okay.
Set real goals. Like the goal is not just I want to be a film editor. That's not specific enough. A goal could be I want to make 10 new connections in the next 2 months to producers and directors that are currently actively working on a feature project that's about to go into production. That's a specific goal.
Right.
Then once you have defined these types of goals, you can figure out a strategy how to get there. How do you meet a feature film director right now that is about to shoot a feature film in 6 to 12 months, and you want to be on their radar right now? So I mentioned already film festivals. I think is a really good way to start building these connections. It's all about, like you're talking about, the passion and what are sort of the common things that you can do. I think another suggestion would be to find in your local area what are the meetups that you have. Here in LA, it's Lazy Puck. So in Lazy Puck, you're not going to meet a lot of directors, but you are going to meet a lot of editors, post-production people, possibly some post-production producers in there. And one way to really become a film editor is that you start assisting. So if you volunteer your time to the organizers of these kind of meetups, that organizer will start introducing you to everybody that's like the people that come back, the people that present on stage. And since you're the helping hand, they will automatically give you that courtesy to just pay back a little for the fact that you're providing value all the time. And so you can start building these relationships. Like right now I'm a backdoor, which means anybody who emails me and says, hey, I've got this really interesting short, and like I'm gonna burn this backdoor right now, but like just last week I had somebody from France email me a resume, really like talked about film school experience, and she wants to come over to the States to do an internship. The way that she was able to get my attention was like she knows what she's doing. She's really strong in Final Cut 10, which is really my number one editing system. It's really hard to find Final Cut 10 assistants. It's nearly impossible because it's the oddball in all the editing softwares. So I'm like, okay, let's Skype next week. So it wasn't me putting out an ad, I'm looking for an assistant editor for Final Cut 10. It would never, like I would get 500, 600 emails back, and you would just get lost.
Yeah.
You have to find the back door. She did, we talked, we have to figure out like visa stuff and all this things, but I could tell from that email, the resume and the interview, she's exactly what I need. And so that's an opportunity. Once you're an intern, you work for like a month or two and you get like, I don't know, $30 a day, something like that, as a per diem, you become an asset to me. Like I cannot afford for you to go back to France and continue your thing. So I'm gonna make it really interesting for you to stay here. If it works out, it doesn't work out. Usually what happens is I'll have an assistant editor and they then move on to another show. I've had 2 assistant editors that I trained, and because my rate will always be lower than what TV shows, union shows will pay, they just had got enough skills that then they were immediately able to then meet up with another editor and get on a union show. So don't email me right now all your shorts. That backdoor is probably burned right now, but there are a lot of people like this that are in post-production that have real needs, and if you can provide value, you can get there. I probably skipped a couple of points. Why don't you guys, I said the backdoor leads, respond to this as well?
For the back.
Look under there.
So,
I'll just slouch down. There we go. All right. So yeah, when it comes to setting goals and identifying those back doors, I think somebody was asking online, how do you balance your life a bit with you having family and you already having a job and you wanting to get into this a bit more. And to be honest, it's really kind of hard to do that in any kind of career change. It's hard to shift like that. But I think you need to start with small steps, and that's part of setting those goals. So if you want to start editing, like I said before, go and find people that are doing this that you can jump on board with and collaborate with somebody. And then, even as you kind of move along, because after working 8 years at a commercial film house with international work, I took the step in going freelance and moving down to LA. And being down here, it was really scary, but I set the goal of within my first 2 months, I wanted to make at least 3 connections. And I achieved that goal, and what it took is putting out tons of emails, applying for a bunch of different jobs. And a lot of the jobs I didn't even hear back on, but I ended up landing at least 3 connections, and 90% of my work now comes from word of mouth. So having that and continuing on, and setting your goals going forward, because even now as I have that word of mouth, I can say, okay, I can get the work, to keep myself afloat, but also now I can create those backdoors like Sven's talking about, to where just yesterday I got a call from a company I've been working with, and they're like, hey, thanks so much for all the help and stuff that you've been advising on, and I was just part of this short, and they're looking for an editor, and I gave him your number, and so now I have a short that I'm going to go talk to somebody about on Tuesday. So it kind of snowballs like that. So build connections, you set those goals, and then identify those backdoors that you can get through with those goals.
Cool. Well, you answer.
Sure.
Take 3 questions that are related to what we've talked about
Sure.
so far. Not
Yeah.
course related, but the topic. Go.
My backdoor is a little bit maybe different. Mine was more word of mouth from being on set. When I first moved to LA, I couldn't really find anything too quickly to get myself back to editing, but I knew that my background and knowing how to be a PA was very beneficial out in LA. So easy enough to get PA work, and then from then on it was just sort of literally word of mouth on set. Whenever anybody asks, oh, what else you do, because it's like the universal LA question, and I said I actually edit, and a lot of scoffing and eye blinking, but once they saw the reel, they realized that it's actually a real career path for me, and that's actually that word of mouth from being on set like that is what got me an interview into my first job. And now, also, those connections that I made on that set has led to other career opportunities as well, such as feature work.
Cool. Do you have any questions we should take?
So no questions, but some comments. So Daniel James just said you can create backdoor leads by doing favors for people and getting favors in return. And then you can grow connections and get the word of mouth. And that's very true. I've done lots of small favors for people that, just started building those good connections with people. So I think it's important to, help each other out. And a part of what we're talking about is what can you provide for somebody, not what you can take from them. So, establish those connections. You want to work with people that you enjoy working with, and not just trying to figure out how to make money off of them. You want to build those connections where you're going to keep doing good work, and you're going to be able to have a living based on that.
Yeah, that's a very good one. You definitely want to, that's a very specific, meaningful action that you can take. I'll give you another example. Eric, who is part of this course here, he's our DaVinci Resolve expert, so whenever you have any technical questions, he usually will answer. He built this entire, almost like a manual of the course, and he showed me the first couple of lessons where he just wrote everything that I'm talking about, and the screenshots and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Why don't we do a bullet point version of that as a worksheet and create that? So he immediately created extra value for me. So he had a meaningful action that he took, where I'm like, this is something that is worth for the students, where they listen to the lesson, then they open up the software and they're trying to emulate what I taught, and they can see the bullet points to just remind themselves what the steps were as they're taking it. So there we go. Then the last one I already opened, which is meaningful actions. Do we have another question?
Let's see.
Monitor action plan.
Let's see.
Okay, so I'm going to do the next one as well, which is monitor your action plan. So whatever you have as your specific goals, I want to meet 10 directors, producers, put all your actions that you do, go to this meeting this week, attend this panel discussion there, reach out to these people via email, trying to offer up, solicit some value to them, and see if you can build a connection. Just keep all that in a Google Doc with a date and a target date and a status update, so you can really find out whether you are on your path of becoming a film editor. Ultimately, what all that leads to is you cutting stuff, which is what you need to be doing anyway. Like, you need to be cutting all the time, and you need to be cutting narrative so that you can always work that muscle, and you can ultimately show off some things. If you have a short, like, I respond to a short. Like, I don't care. It doesn't have to be a feature. I see something that's really well told, I respond to it. I told that story about Aaron, who sent me his short, and then now we're collaborating on something. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I actually wanted to piggyback on what you said earlier about showing up to your screenings as the editor.
Yeah.
I actually went to a couple free screenings around here in the LA area, and two things always seemed to jump out at me. The amount of time that they had with it is actually a little bit more than I always expected somehow for short films, because these were all short films, by the way, that I was going to screenings for. And second, almost all of them had problems finding an editor for some reason. So I went up to almost all of them, introduced myself. Like, if you're an editor, you could benefit a lot by checking out your local scene, like Vinny actually was saying, and seeing what people have to offer, and your services are actually very much required that you might not know about. Even in the LA area, like, there's a ton of work out there, guys. You just got to go get it.
Yeah, and for piggybacking on going to screenings and stuff too, I jumped on to a 48-hour film festival just the beginning of this month, or at the beginning of April, and I was just doing it because it sounded like fun. I wasn't expecting anything out of it, but the film ended up winning the festival, and then...
Not just that, you won everything.
Yeah, we had 12 nominations and 6 wins out of just this 48-hour film festival, and immediately afterwards, it was just a nomination. People were just talking to me about this small little film that I just went in to do for fun, and then I already landed a meeting with somebody to go talk about how I might be able to help them on, like, Oprah kind of content. So it might be an interesting lead. So I'm excited about that. But we have...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. We have a question from Ernesto about meaningful action. It says, how do you define what meaningful action is? Is there criteria it must be, or must meet to be meaningful?
Well, meaningful means it's something that actually helps you pursue the goal that is supported by your passion. So sometimes just blindly submitting resumes to certain production companies because they're listed in the Hollywood Reporter or whatever your local way is how production companies are listed might not be meaningful in that regard if you end up now being offered an internship at a reality show house.
Yeah.
You could take that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but if you become a real valuable source for a reality show post-production house, they'll make it really, really easy for you to stay. So you'll get that paycheck and you make a living, and you do that for 3 to 5 years, and then that burning desire is going to come back of you. Well, I really wanted to be going that path of an assistant editor for a feature film editor. I didn't have time to really pursue that because all my energy is there to just do a good job over there. And crossing over is really hard. Like, I hear a lot of people, I worked in reality as well, and I enjoyed it for 5 years, and then I was done. And I had to just completely say, I need to not take phone calls in that industry. I need to stay unemployed so that I can find ways to cross over. And while when you're young, it's exciting to just be hired by a production company. If you're just sort of slightly in the wrong niche and you're working there for 3 to 5 years, while you learn a lot about your craft, and it's always good to be working on your craft, you gotta stay focused on your goal and take meaningful actions that drive you towards that goal. That's what I mean with meaningful actions. A lot of people are busy doing things. Not a lot of people are busy doing things getting done.
Yeah. And for example, part of me coming down to LA was that I was working in the commercial space, which I loved working on commercials. I think it was a really great creative outlet for me. But really I got into this because I wanted to do narrative work. And, coming down here, I knew I would have to take jobs in commercial space because that's where I had a strong reel. But I was all along I've been pushing along from narrative work and putting my name out there saying like, yeah, I'm doing this stuff for to keep myself afloat, and I love doing it. But if you have any leads or have people that might be interested or in an editor for narrative work, then please put my name out there. And so far it's been working. So it's taking a step, getting away from your comfort zone, and then really trying to go for what you're passionate about.
So does this mean for our, like, the first opportunity to present itself, no matter what it is, we should take it?
I used to do it the way, like, if I was personally intrigued, like if it was a personal challenge,
Okay.
I would take it.
But just to get our foot in the door, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, if you're excited, you should do whatever gets you excited. Sometimes you get really excited about the paycheck at the beginning, or to just the feeling that you are actually in a production company where they have cameras and things are being shot. This stuff is exciting, and that keeps you going, that keeps you working hard. But at some point, it's not about the paycheck, it's not about being on set or being in the bay, it's about the story. It's about the people you work with, the stories that you're telling, and the connection that you're making with the audience. That's ultimately what's going to make you work the 10,000 hours that you need to work to become a seasoned, successful film editor, I would say. And you can't do it if you're burned out. It's impossible.
Very true.
Yep. So we have another question here
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Erwin. He says, is there a specific way for an editor to communicate with the videos he works on? Is social media a good way to show what you're working on at all?
Yeah, I think it's a great way. I think I teach filmmaking at a school, I used to, and I do it at UCLA sort of as a guest speaker. And I tell the students every time, you need to have a YouTube channel, you need to be making films all the time. Like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, you need to put a little piece of content out there to get a feel for the audience. 75% of the audience, the students look at me like no, that's not for me. I'm a filmmaker. This is above me.
No.
You are missing out of an opportunity to connect to an audience. YouTube is designed to have an audience find your video. If your video doesn't connect with an audience, it's not YouTube. It's the audience that just doesn't connect, doesn't respond to the video in a way where the algorithm notices, oh, people are watching it, they're sharing it, they're commenting on it. And sometimes they do all these things for the wrong reasons. You're like, no, this is not filmmaking, this is exploitation, whatever it is. But there are thousands of creators on YouTube that do exactly what they want to do, tell the stories that they're passionate about, and are connecting to an audience. And they get that instant feedback where they can build up their craft 10x. So instead of cutting a short and it takes 6 months, you're doing a video, it takes you 2 weeks, you immediately know whether that video is working or not. So social media is a powerful tool for filmmakers and editors.
Yeah, and guys, take advantage of that as much as you can, because I recently gave a talk on how to get started as a visual effects artist, because I do VFX also, but I think a lot of the same kind of things apply to being an editor. So, and a lot of what I was saying is there's democratization of what's going on inside your film space now. It's so much cheaper than it used to be, 20, even 10 years ago. So you can have access to, and people, you might argue about pricing of Adobe, but really you're getting access to this full suite. And then you can really jump in there and dive into a bunch of different things that you can do with it. And then also, computers are kind of becoming cheaper too, to where you can afford a build, and you guys can jump in there, and then go on YouTube and get your videos out, put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook or wherever it might be. So take advantage of that democratization, and then go to wherever you can to really spread the word.
I just saw Dennis and Peter in the chat room, so I'm gonna make them moderators as well.
Dennis had a pretty good question.
All right, so I'm gonna do the last point, and then we're gonna actually move on to the course because we're already half hour in. The last point is, how do you actually get paid, and how do you, like, everybody that is a good client that you've identified will want to pay you for your time. If they're like, they want to take advantage of you, they get a lot of value, but they don't want to pay you, that's for two reasons. One is they don't have the money. Then nice people, they just don't have the money, and there's no way you can get paid if they don't have the money. Or number two is they're just being assholes. They just take advantage, and there are plenty of people that do that. So you just got to find those people that are not assholes and that have money. And so as you're pursuing all your goals, you got to find the clients that actually have a budget and that you get through the back door to have that connection where they feel like you're providing value for them. At that point you're in. And then when you ask for a little extra, or if you deliver a little bit extra value, you can have that conversation and say, would you consider paying me X? Or a job becomes available. I'll give you another example. I was working as an editor at Hit Record. That's a TV show directed by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. We were 6 or 7 editors, a lot of them pretty seasoned editors. And the producer walks in and said, oh, we're going to shoot this little segment with Anne Hathaway. Does anybody have experience doing green screen editing? Because this is all going to be shot on a green screen stage. I look around. There were like
I don't.
5 editors were like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. I'm here like, yes, I know how to do green screen.
Yeah.
And they're like, great, so show me a reel tomorrow of what you've done. I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
okay, so now I gotta like find stuff where it did. And luckily I found a couple of things where I could like, yeah, this kind of works as green screen.
Yeah.
And I sent him an email that evening and was always responsive, and I got the job to cut that segment because I wanted to have that on my resume. And so this initiative is something you should really just have your wires, your antennas really tuned up.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying like there's going to be so many opportunities put forth
Yeah.
in this field specifically as an editor that you're going to run into. So it's either be ready and be prepared possibly for what's coming up, or get left behind.
So yeah, so provide
I mean, true.
provide value, identify the clients that have money, and then when the time is right, you should ask for it. And we'll talk about that in the course, how you really negotiate your rate and what strategies you can pursue to make sure that you will be compensated fairly. At this point, I see a lot of questions about the course.
Yep.
So why don't we get into those? Just to give you a quick overview, this is an online editing course that you do at your own pace. So if you sign up and you can't be like the first one out of the gate, you need a couple of weeks to get started, that's totally fine. You will always have students that are in your pace. Like each module has its own group of people that are working on that, and they can talk to each other, they can give each other feedback. And so don't worry about that part. There are 6 modules by now.
Yep.
Number 1 is basic editing, fundamentals. So if you don't know anything, that's where we just walk you, take your hand, and we'll say, download this software, download the media here. This is how you do your media organization. This is how you do your first cut. Module 2 is advanced storytelling. This is where we really want you to be aware of scenes have to have a dramatic question. They can't just be people talking to each other, sharing information. That's a meeting. A meeting is boring. Nobody wants to be part of a meeting. Everybody wants to see if the main character has a specific goal and an obstacle and an urgency to overcome that goal in each scene. It can be little, it can be big. That's the kind of stuff we talk about in the Module 2. Module 3 is all about branding. So it's about, okay, what do I want to be? How do I present myself? How do I get the meeting? Getting the meeting is more important than actually getting the job. A lot of people try to get the job before the meeting. And then once you're in the room, what do you do to be good in the room? Like, what are the types of questions that you should be prepared for? How do you make sure it's a conversation? It's not really an interview where they ask you a bunch of questions, you answer. It feels like a casual, you're like sharing a moment in a way. We're sharing a moment right now. And so then module 4, 5, and 6 are split up in different genres. We keep on working on the narrative, then we move over to documentary. We'll crack open a new part of dailies, and then we move over to branded, which is like one way to make good money and that can carry you over while you're pursuing your dreams and cutting shorts on the side. Now let's take some answers.
Yep.
The course closes on Monday.
Yep. And then we also have, does this course teach you anything about Avid Media Composer? And I just wanted to address this real quick because
Yeah.
I've had that kind of come up quite a bit on the Discord. People are asking, do I have to use this software? Do I have to use DaVinci? We designed this course to be software agnostic, meaning you guys can use whatever software you guys feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
We do always recommend trying something new if you haven't tried it, like DaVinci. Learn another tool, it's just going to make you more valuable. So I just wanted to address that real quick just because I want to make sure you guys know you guys can jump in it with whatever you
Yeah, we're working in DaVinci because it's for free. You can download it. It works on PC and Mac, and it doesn't suck. That's why we use it. You guys like
Yeah.
Premiere. I love Final Cut 10.
Yep.
And all of those are good. I think there might be a module where I work on Avid just to show it to you. But this will not train you how to cut on Avid. This is not a software tutorial at all.
Yep.
This is solely
A little bit of
focused
DaVinci, but just so that you can do what we're setting out to do, which is telling stories.
Let's see here. And let's see.
I had a couple of questions that people emailed me prior to the stream.
Here's one.
Yeah, go for it.
People are asking about certificates
Yes.
at the end of the course, and we've had that question come up too. Do you want to address this one?
Yeah, there's a bunch of people asked this question about the certificate. I'm so thankful that we have the company that is running all the back end of this. They have the function to issue a certificate. So it would be just something that we would turn on and then it would become available. The reason why I didn't make it available right now is because I want to think about it. I actually want to talk to a couple of people in the industry and say, can we actually set a standard of what this course should accomplish so that the certificate means something? So there would be some requirements that we would establish, which is like you would hand in all the scenes. We would somehow have a review process, make sure that you have accomplished certain goals in this course, and then we would give you a certificate that's hopefully not just participation, but it's something more detailed and gives some specific information of the skill set that you've acquired.
Yep.
But it'll take we got to settle in now. We got to figure out if everybody's happy, everybody knows what they're doing, and once we've completed that first phase of onboarding, then we will expand the course.
Yep. And then Burke also asked, he's stuck in kind of montage and wedding videos, and so he's wondering if the course is going to help him kind of have movement inside of his career with that. So do you think the course would add much to that? Would it be able to help him out?
I think so, because wedding videos have a lot of things that are common to storytelling, some very universal things, but there are also very specific things that you would be learning that are not related to wedding videos, like narrative, working with actors, picking performances, having a take and then picking another take. How long do you hold a close-up to create an emotion? What lines do you pull out to create more subtext? All these things you will be trained in. And then, of course, with documentary, how do you find the bigger themes in a documentary? There are no scenes in documentary. You have to create scenes based on big ideas and character actions. So that's stuff that you would learn, and then you still need to then find a short or a backdoor to be able to brand yourself as somebody who has cut a festival short.
Okay, cool. And then I think some people are kind of asking some general questions about how far do we dive into the filmmaking process as a whole. So Amanda asked, does the course teach you anything about screenwriting or story development from the pre-production stage? And what we try to do is kind of give tips on those things, not so much jump into this full filmmaking course. We want to make sure that we're talking about how to be a go-to editor and keep it concise to that. So while there are things that you have to touch on in order to, so if you have script notes or something like that, you got to know what those are. You got to be able to work with those. So we'll touch on those things as we go along and as we find pertinent to the situation that we're working with.
I also want to add that we talk about David Mamet, who talks about screenwriting, and we use it in the context of editing. There's a lot of things that he talks about. What's a scene? What is a dramatic scene? That then I apply in a case study to turn a scene that was not really that dramatic and completely create stakes in there based on those questions that he identified. So writing and editing are very similar in terms of the goals that we try to accomplish. And I will add another case study where I completely rewrite a scene in the bonus module sometime this month, where that also has a lot to do with changing the writing. Do we have another question?
Yep. Just had-
I have one here.
Okay.
Someone says they don't have the money to do the course right now. When will you make the next round? We don't know. It's probably going to be towards the end of the year, beginning of next year. It sort of depends on how well this first round goes. It's the first wave, generation 1, and the tweaks that we want to do to the course to make it really run smoothly. It's running. People that are students, how smooth is it running right now? Let us know in the chat room. Give us an idea how happy you are, and so that everybody else get a sense of where we're at. But it is an interesting time to be part of this.
One other option that we have is a 3 payment plan option, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys are having a problem paying up front for that first price, you guys can break it up in those 3 payments if that helps you out a little bit. Otherwise, we will open up the course later on in the year, like Sven was saying. So.
Yeah. I have a question here about the dailies. The dailies are very long. It takes a long time to download them. He's reporting 12 hours. I have a feeling that has to do with your connection, because actually all the dailies live on an Akamai server, which is like Amazon. So it should technically be super fast, and we actually have a 2 gigabyte limit. So every dailies pack cannot be bigger than 2 gigabytes. So it should technically work. If you have problems, it shouldn't take 12 hours. And you have usually a fast connection, just send us an email and we'll connect you to the support team of our company that is providing the backend, and we'll try and figure out if maybe we need to put it on a Dropbox or some other form that you can get it faster. But it should be fast. Like, this platform can handle thousands of students. Do you have another one?
So yeah, people are talking about film school and university and how our course might compare to that. And we do have a section inside the course actually that talks about film school and whether it's worth it or not. And without getting too much into it here, maybe we can touch on that answer.
Yeah, I mean, I designed the course in a way based on my experience. I went to film school. I went to American Film Institute, and I love the experience. It's one of the top film schools, but I don't think it's the best way to learn filmmaking. I think you're sort of going in it for the experience and to have these peers that rise with you. That's a really important point. Other than that, the actual doing things, everything takes much longer than it needs to be nowadays. And then if you don't go into a top film school, if you just go into a regular film school, I think the quality it's sort of like with your peers, like, are they really in it to be here, or is it just like, okay, this was my plan C to get into this school, as opposed to I'm competing against 100 other people for this spot.
Yep.
And then it becomes really hard to stay passionate, and it all has to come from you. It's not coming from the environment at that point. And then maybe the teachers that are there aren't maybe the best educators at that point. They don't really feel the need to motivate you, inspire you, get that fire going. They might have been teaching this particular class for 10 years and they just want to get in and out. I've taught the same class for several. I know what it's like to show up every day and teach, and you got to really make sure that you're still doing a good job, and there are a lot of people that enjoy that. But so I think this compares to film school in the way that it's all about results, and it's not a lot about, okay, what are the peers here? Are we gonna make a film together? That's something you have to sort of consider.
Yeah, I didn't find my passion for filmmaking in school, actually. I found it by doing it. And Vinny and I both didn't go to film school.
No.
And it was just because we kept doing it over and over and over again, and the love of movies and cinema itself that just sort of drove us towards, this is what we want to do. We know we can do it. We'll teach ourselves. That's kind of how we had to do it. Like, we stocked up on all kinds of screenwriting books, all kinds of software, like, ideas to learn off of, or like new YouTube tutorials to try new visual effects or something put towards our iPhone shot little things that we would put together. It's more like film school for me would be more beneficial on building those connections that you you find in film school, because you're gonna unite. You're gonna be a unit for a minute there, and you guys are gonna have each other's backs. And that's kind of what Vinny and I sort of ran into during our escapade.
I see an interesting question there from Erwan. Do you believe it's better to advertise myself as a multitasker, director, writer, editor, cameraman, or to just say one of these, like editor? I think you should have, if you're all of these, you need to have different business cards for all of these.
Right.
I get turned off if somebody hands me a business card and says writer, director, editor on there, and then like 3 other things. You are not one of those. When you're an editor, you are an editor, and you have to present yourself. Nobody's going to hire you to cut a feature film if it says director, producer, editor on your business card. So you need to have an online presence for all of these different things that you might want to do. And maybe really define for yourself, maybe it's really just that one thing that I actually really enjoy, and just brand myself this way. It will only help you to be very specific about your niche.
Yeah, and coming from my old boss, he defined himself as a director DP. So sticking to maybe 2 max is probably that limit you want to put on it. Because
Which makes sense
Kinda go
for
hand
a
in
commercial
hand, though.
director to
Right.
say I'm a DP. That tells me, oh, okay, this guy's very visual. He
Yeah.
probably has a real good competence about making sure that the visuals are really pristine.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yep. And for myself, I do writing, I do directing, I do editing, I do visual effects, I teach. And those are all things I do, I think, well. But what I learned the hard way is don't put them all on there, like Sven was saying, because people won't take you seriously. The thing I get a lot is, you're jack of all trades but master of none. But I don't find that to be true. I do find myself to be masterful at multiple things. But people won't take that as seriously until they know you. So show them what your focus is on what you're going for in that project, and then you can kind of expand from there.
Cool.
Yep.
If you guys have any other questions, we're sort of getting towards the end. We maybe have another 9 minutes. Go ahead, ask them. We'll take more questions. If you haven't checked out the course yet, click the link, thisguyis.com/the-go-to-editor, and just see what are the specific details, what is it that we're accomplishing with these different modules, what we're trying to accomplish. The goal is really to make you to aspire to become an editor that people want to work with. So instead of you sending out resumes, which I hardly do these days, you want people that have worked with you in the past to be so enthusiastic that they'll call you back even years after the fact. And every time a friend calls them and says, I need an editor, who can you recommend? That you're that first person that they recommend. Just the other day, I got actually an email from a producer who said, oh, the sound supervisor on the film we are currently working on recommended you as an editor. We're about to shoot a $2 million Western. Would you consider this? And I'm like, yes, I would consider this. Send it back. I don't even have to go through the main channels. I don't even know what the film is about yet. It came through that collaboration, that relationship that I've built with Hugo, sound designer, re-recording mixer, where we just trade each other projects back and forth, and we become our go-to people whenever they get asked from a director, who do you know?
And as we're kind of getting towards the end here, I thought this was kind of a good question. It was asked before, what came up again. What's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you started working as an editor?
Definitely organization is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish that I would have realized how important it is to pursue your passion full force early on. I love doing this YouTube thing, for example. I'm obsessed with it. I wish I would have started 5 to 10 years earlier with it, because it's opening up. It's not just because, hey, I'm a creator and I have all these subscribers, but it really helps define my brand as an editor. People now recognize me when I go to networking events as the guy who has 200,000 subscribers, and it's the guy that somehow was able to make editing have some form of connection. That helps me as an editor. It gets me more opportunities. The feature that I just finished is by a director in Germany who was following the YouTube channel for years and said, I knew I wanted to work with that guy. So when I'm ready to pull the trigger, I'm going to contact him, and I would have never gotten that job. So being really able to figure out what your passion is and then align everything around that is something that I did far too late in my career.
Yep. And I have to agree with Sven. Just trying to recognize early on where your passions are is probably the most important thing you do to make yourself happy in what you're doing. Because that's, while I did love what I was doing, I did get into this to do narrative work. And I think maybe I stayed in that space too long as far as being a commercial editor. Because I did start to get unhappy in it. And I didn't want to start resenting what I did. So try to recognize that early on and go for it when you find yourself able to.
Okay, maybe 2 more questions?
Yep. Let's see here.
I have one here. Should we focus heavily on audio and color correction, especially if you're a new editor? I think so. Like when you send a cutout to your director, I would make sure that it is color corrected, and even more so the audio sounds like it's the final thing, like it's ready to go. If it sounds rough, if it looks too bright, it's not moody, it's not creating the feeling that you need, you're going to get more notes, you're going to get a nervous director when they maybe don't need to be nervous because the cut is actually working. It's just not, it just doesn't feel right yet, it doesn't sound, he's bumping. So I would always encourage you, whatever you're screening, make it as polished as possible.
Yeah, and I think it is dependent on who you're working with too. If you're familiar with the person and they know that, hey, I just want to see the idea, then maybe you don't need to do the color correction stuff. Because I worked closely with my old boss where I could just show him really rough cuts. And obviously wouldn't send that stuff off to an agency if they need to look at it. But we were able to kind of just communicate faster between us. But that's because we have a working rapport, like a good rapport. But just keep in mind who you're working with but I do agree with Sven. If you're sending it off to somebody that you're new with or somebody that you're trying to impress, maybe just give it a little bit of extra attention.
Nobody sees it unless it's there. Like you can show a rough cut to a producer and tell him, well, it's rough. Yeah, I just want to give you an idea. That producer needs to be super seasoned to understand how to watch a rough cut.
Right.
They will always respond to it as if it's the final thing.
Yep. Then we have another question. I love to edit but have no idea what to shoot. Related to advice on shoot your own stuff as you can edit. So, do you need to shoot your own stuff? From Dennis.
Well, if you don't know anyone, I mean, if you're an editor, you're passionate about editing, you don't need to shoot. Mm-hmm. You just need to find people that have stuff that are dying to have you cut it. And you can get pretty quality material of people that don't enjoy the process of editing. It's a hard thing to do, to edit. Spending hours and hours on a computer and just grinding through it. A lot of people enjoy the process of shooting something and working with actors. It's like it's all fast and instant gratification. Editing takes a long time. So to be that guy is great if you enjoy that. And so I wouldn't necessarily say shoot something for yourself, but I would be open to it as well. If you think that's the best way to have some classy material, do that. Be Peter McKinnon.
Yeah.
If you know who that
and
is.
What Steve and I did a lot was shoot our own things because we were in a small town, and before we built those connections, we would go out and shoot our own movies.
Just me and him sometimes.
Yeah, just something short, but something to practice on. Mm-hmm. So if it's worth it to you and you feel like you can tell a good story, go for it.
And also, if you have any access to any sort of stock footage site, some huge challenge I give to myself every once in a while is maybe grabbing a stock audio, a song, any license-free song, and then I'll grab some stock footage to try and see if I can challenge myself to edit a story to stock footage itself and see if I can make a comparable story through just stock footage. You don't have to go shoot anything, but you can at least find footage to and then add a voiceover track underneath it or something to give it a story edge or anything like that. I'm just saying you could find footage to edit if you really want to.
Right. And a skill actually I teach my students when I teach visual effects is I give them footage to work with, but I also have them go and find their own footage online to just practice with because they can do it with so many different things. And you can do the same thing with editing. Go find things that you can cut up and repurpose. And you don't have to show it to anybody. You can just do it for yourself and your personal learning.
Let's take one last question, and then we wrap it up.
Let's see here. Something about the course. Do we get the chance to publish our show reel or cuts through your platform? as a type of publicity for us after the end of the course?
So you cannot use this footage to put on your reel or use as a work sample to get a job. That's one of the concessions we had to make with the producers of this high-class material. There are a lot of actors. You get to see these actors in sometimes vulnerable states, and this cannot go beyond the educational room of this course. So you can share them in the Discord, and students can give each other feedback. That is absolutely cool. But please do not put this up on YouTube publicly or put it on your reel and pretend like you're the editor of that film. If one of the producers is going to catch that somewhere, they're going to immediately shut down this arrangement that we have. So please respect that.
Yep.
And I mean, I think it's still valuable. Like, you're getting a real opportunity here where you can work with talent, that, like, you don't have to worry so much about how I'm gonna make this like work, how I'm gonna cut around a certain performance. The performance is like Teresa Palmer is an incredible actress, and she to be able to cut her and tell the story and then figure out how you're gonna shape that story is such a treat. So that should be motivation enough.
Okay.
All right, good. Thank you so much for joining us here. Happy Mother's Day again. I apologize that we sort of took an hour or two away from you, from your mom. Now go back to mom and say you still love her. We love you. Thank you so much. Check out the course, and we'll see you soon.
And thank you so much for everybody that's already purchased the course and has gone through it and is already involving themselves, because we're having a lot of fun with it, and we hope you guys do too.
It's absolutely great.
Cool. Happy editing. Cheers. All right, let's end the stream.